Have you ever noticed something as an adult that you didn't see in your childhood? Hey there, I'm Danielle Zapchenk, and thanks for joining me today on the Parable Podcast. Meet Tracy Scott. Our conversation highlights the transformative power of examining her own story to uncover more awareness.
We just constantly can be choosing blessings or curses, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do I use this knowledge to bless my life and the lives of the community God's giving me going forward? I just am always amazed when I take the time to reflect. The experiences are so much richer than I would have realized if I hadn't just taken a little time to sit with it.
Here's my conversation with Tracy Scott. To introduce you to Tracy Scott. Tracy and I met this past spring through some mutual friends, and I loved hearing Tracy's story at this event, and I just knew, I'm like, she has to be a part of this. And so Tracy, thank you so much for joining us today and being able to share your story with us.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun. Thanks for having me.
I feel connected to you in a couple pieces. Like, I know you love design. And so one of the things you shared when you were at the event, you were showcasing a couple of books, but you're like, I don't like the cover of this, so I rewrapped it.
Yep.
And then I have to take off those dust jackets sometimes because either they're super ugly or I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to the book. And so I totally get that. Do you like to shake things up a little bit? Like if you're like, I'm not feeling this design, I'm just going to completely rearrange my entire living room today.
I do actually no. So it's funny you would say that. My husband is a huge, let's shake it up and move everything around. I'm a little bit more, and this is probably a weird thing because I think some people who are really into design, it's just always happening. And I guess that is true because I do it for work, but no, I like to get it just the way I want it and then be like, and that's done. Okay, and now we can just walk in here and be like, doesn't it feel welcoming and cozy? And so, it's hilarious. We just had to have a big pane of glass replaced, and they had to pull everything out of the room. And I thought, I know that my husband is going to be like, oh, I love the way that looks. Let's move all the furniture, And I'm like, I love that room the way it is. But the dust jackets, yes. If I've got a book, and at any stage of life, I probably have 5 books that I'm just constantly going back to. And if I'm opening the book going, gosh, I hate the way this book looks. And fully admitting to myself, like, this is pretty shallow and unimportant. Like, there's great wisdom in this book. But I'm like, I can't hate the cover of this book every time I open this. I need to go cover it in some cute wrapping paper.
Oh, there is another podcaster that I listen to, and she often says she loves books. She actually goes and gets them rebound.
Wow, that's next level.
Yes, I know. She does have like a beautiful library. And so there are just some that just don't match the book itself. Okay.
Yes.
Crazy enough. Okay. Crazy. Speaking of your home and design, when you were a little kid, did you ever wish that there was I'd love to be a part of this TV or movie family? That's
a good question. There were a number of TV families that I liked and had different people who it was like, oh, that guy, that person's like my sister, or that's probably like my family. I think the family that I probably most resonated with would have been the Family Ties. Because my parents are both of those parents were the very kind of hippie progressive people, but I had grew up in California. My dad was the, accountant who went to Harvard and MIT and was a Top Gun pilot and was, very, very accomplished, very structured. Everything in his life kind of has always screamed structure and discipline. And, my mom would have been an amazing 2015 mom because, we composted in 1980, and she always wore Birkenstocks and was always going to the library and researching, and we grew a lot of our our own food. So it was like, did you ever see that show Dharma and Greg? I always say that was about my parents. Like
absolutely.
The really academic structured guy marries the like super like loosey-goosey fun. And so, and so then you add kids into that and there's this weird hodgepodge of all these things. And so I think that part of that family always resonated with me. Like, oh yeah, they've got like all these different pieces that seem very opposite.
Is there anything that you can see in yourself? You're like, oh, wow, I definitely see my dad in this part of my personality, and I can see my mom.
Yeah, it's actually interesting living in these middle years of life because everyone was always like, you're so much like your dad. And I'm the firstborn kid, very much leaned into the firstborn narrative. So it was always very much like, I'm like my dad. I have a sister who's like my mom. And then I have a sister who's kind of a little bit of both. And those were always the generic things. As I get older, more and more, I see like, oh no, I'm a lot more like my mom than I thought. I think having kids taught me that. I think just getting further into life, it's like, oh yeah, no, like I think it was easy for me. It was just so easy to see my dad that I think I thought that was like 90% and more and more and more. I'm like, oh no, there's a lot more of this in me that I see coming out, particularly in these middle years of life where you just really cannot be taking yourself quite so seriously.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I can see both of my parents in myself. And then, when I look at our kids, I'm like, I'd be interested to see how that grows and changes.
Yes.
My daughter's boyfriend the other day told her, she said something and he's like, oh, you're just like your mom. And she's like, oh,
what?
But luckily it was in a humor setting, and thank you for that. It wasn't anything tragic, but I think that's so interesting how we like pull those pieces just dependent on our different life experiences and how they've influenced our life. Tracy, what would you say is one thing you can, or maybe you're already going to be doing in the next week to help you take care of yourself?
So for me, the way I start my day, and this is not something I've always known, but starting my day with quiet reflection is literally game changing to my day. I would say I've moved in and out of the practice of journaling, reading, thinking, praying in the morning. But we had a couple of years where just a lot of stuff hit all at once. And I did not do those things and then really had to work to kind of add them back in. And I think losing that for a while and then coming back to it has really taught me how important it is to me, because I have a college student and 2 high school kids and a husband who travels a lot for work. And so a lot of the times I'm kind of single. I don't want to say single parenting because Jeff is very much a part of the process, but he's not physically here a lot of the time. And so when that's your reality, and I'm a planner, and so even though I've lived enough life to not cling to the plans, there's always something chaotic every day that these people throw at me, right? Something unexpected. And it's always nice to be able to go back and be like, oh, wasn't that time with my coffee just delightful?
Yeah.
So yes, that time is uniquely life-giving to me.
That's super helpful. And I know that for myself, that has shifted over time, just depending on the season. And like you, where we plan, I have to plan. Like for a while, I was annoyed at myself that I felt like I had to check it off. But when I removed it from my calendar, I actually didn't do it. Yeah. And so that time I like our kids, when everyone's listening to this, our kids have just started going back to school. And so to have that like structure helped me. Again, I haven't always had that in my life, depending on the season, but that has been really helpful. And maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe one day it's 20 minutes, Same. Who knows?
Same.
Thanks for sharing that.
Of
Is
course.
there anything in this season of your life that you're like, if I had to pick, this is what I worry about the most?
It's funny you would say that, because in my time reflecting today, I was really kind of trying to name a few of these things. So I am in my second round of having a high school senior. And I will preface this by saying I have walked through high school and have felt uniquely bummed that so little of my high school experience actually is applicable to today's high school experience, right? I really thought more of the lessons I learned would be little nuggets of it just, the world is so different. Everything is so much more demanding. Everything requires so much more time. I mean, my daughter said, when do you think you were as stressed as I was junior year of high school? And I really had to think about it. And I was like, I don't think I was as stressed as you were your junior year of high school until I was in year 2 of my job. I was out of college. I was working. I was paying rent. I was so much further into life. So one of the things that I struggle with when I have a high school senior is, just how far they have to go before they leave this house. Right? I know that they'll get there, right? And I've already had one kid go through it. And I'm I really feel like I leaned into these themes. Like you said, it's the start of the school year. So it's August, September, October. And you're you're still sometimes sleeping through your alarm in the morning. Yeah. And if I didn't go up to your room, yes, oh my word, and then you can do all these things what's going to happen? What if you don't have a roommate who wakes you? You're going to fail out of college, right? I've gone from one sleep in to failing out of college, but there is very much this lens right now that is unavoidable, right? And I'm just trying to hold it so healthily and not project out into the future. But it is are you going to get there? Yeah. Are we going to send you off to live by yourself and you're still going to be sleeping through your alarm? I don't know. We'll see. But yes, that is the life stage we're at right now. And I'm constantly trying to say, remember all the things your daughter learned and did. And it is that senior year from start to finish, it's night and day, right? And in the end, you usually are I shouldn't have freaked out about all those things I freaked out about September of your senior year. But it's still attention around here.
Yeah, understandable. Gosh. Yeah. Well, thanks for being honest and sharing that with us. I think, when we look at all the different seasons of our life, we can go back and say, okay, I see that now. I understand why I had my worries, but I've seen how God has used that in so many different ways. And I think that's kind of the ultimate reason of the Parable Podcast is we have these stories, we have these seasons. And when we look back and take time to reflect, we can recognize, wow, God was in it. He was walking alongside me. He was helping me wake up my child. And we've seen his provision while maybe we didn't realize it in the moment. So Tracy, I'd love for you to share one of your parable stories with us today.
Yeah. So this was interesting. I mean, when I thought about it, and I love even just the idea of parables, right? I love story. I feel like I learn best from other people's stories. We have an expression in our house that is, don't waste the mistakes, which is, and I'm always don't waste others' mistakes. Don't have to do it yourself, right? We can learn so much from other people. And I was trying to think of what are different turning points or parables? And it was interesting. What I really was leaning into, and it's kind of top of mind in our life right now, it's just kind of come up a lot, is just the importance of examining your own story. The context for this is my husband is at a conference right now, actually, and is really just in the process of leaning in and learning. And so I've been thinking a lot about the very first time I really went back, not that I didn't know myself and couldn't have talked about things, but the first time I kind of went through a process of what are the big turning points in my story. Yeah. And it was just such a fascinating exercise in so many ways. But I think there are so many things that you notice as an adult when you go back and you process, things that happened to you, without a fully formed brain and without a lot of maturity, right? Yes. It's crazy. And, one meaningful example for me, I would say a parable in my life is the first time I did a story conference. It was just a one-day thing. It was at my church. And I think the purpose was parenting. Let's take the time to sift back through childhood and look at the skills you're going to bring to the table and the skills that maybe you're lacking. And I thought, oh, this is like, I love the idea of this. This sounds great. And so often, it was funny. I remember my husband saying, I would never want to go to a conference like that. It sounds so mean. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I mean, look at us. Like, we're doing our best. Do you really want our kids at some point to go back and like look through and be like, well, I liked this, I didn't like this? And it was really interesting. And, you know, we're wired very differently, and growth is always like a top 3 for me. I love change. I love growth. I'm always kind of here for it. And I was like, I think those are going to be some of the best conversations we ever have with our kids, when they're like, hey, you did this and I know you meant this. Really kind of wounded me, because we can't do it perfectly, right? And we're always acting and behaving through that lens of what feels like love or what feels like hurt to us. And it's different for each person. So yeah, that was such a fascinating experience for me. And I know I touched on it a little bit at the event where we met, because for me, you know, the process was we went back. Well, I'll start with like one grounding principle I would say that I've always had whenever you do like any sort of reflection work, is just this ability to look at the landscape of my life and be really grateful. Grateful to be alive, grateful for breath, grateful for the sun coming up. And, you know, you start walking through life and you're in community and you have friends, and you start to realize, like, not in a toxic positivity sort of a way, just in a, no, I'm really grateful to be here, right? And I really just thought, I think God just kind of made me this way. Like, I think gratitude is just like a little bit hardwired into me. But then I did this little conference, and we, you know, took some time and wrote little turning points. And I think the way she structured it was, you know, we took our life in these little chunks, and it was like, what were the highs and what were the lows and what were kind of lessons? And I thought, man, I can't believe I've never done this before. I've really never, you're in Bible studies or community groups, and I love to write and wrote professionally for a number of years. And so you're always kind of going back and being like, yeah, what did I learn? Or what happened there, right? But I looked at this little progression as we went through the day, and I kind of like sucked in my breath at how many people had died throughout my childhood. A crazy amount for me to have not known this about myself. Like, it was friends in church and childhood friends, and a kid in my 5th grade class, a friend from my 8th grade class, a friend from my 11th grade class, a friend from my 12th grade class, grandparents, dads in the families I was nannying for, leaders at my church. And as I say that, I realize it could land like, oh, like, were you just like stuffing down all of this trauma? This sounds horrible. And no, it wasn't. It really wasn't like that at all. I was just kind of stunned. I thought, this is a lot of loss, and this is a lot of working through the permanence of death. How did I not know this? And it was just one of those things. Clearly, my parents did a tremendous job of coaching me through so much loss, and not that I'd ever really even noticed that. So did my church. So did my faith community. They showed up really, really well. But I just thought, this is a gigantic theme that has really formed me and the way I've been. I thought, this is where the gratitude comes from. But I had never identified this like really big theme in my own life before. And again, I think when we do that too, we grow in our awareness of how God moved in really incredible ways that only He could have, right? Because as I'm looking at this list, and I'm like, this is really kind of bizarre that I didn't know this about myself, and that I've even had conversations with friends like, gratitude seems to come really easy to you. And I'm like, yeah, just kind of made that way. Like, no. As I looked at this list, I thought I could have shaken out really differently with this, right? It could have been like, well, nothing matters because we could die tomorrow, right? I mean, I could have easily picked up that theme. I didn't, and I don't know why I didn't, because again, some of these things happened when I was so young. I know I can say on the back end, I processed it well and had really loving, wonderful people helping me process it well. But somehow for me, it really created created this foundational awareness that each day was a gift, not to be taken for granted. And I remember someone once talking about, like, it was a friend, and, you know, I don't even know where we had the conversation, but she was talking about, like, you know how you have all those dreams for each stage of your life? And I remember thinking, no, I do not think ahead and have dreams for different stages of my life. Like, and it was kind of this awareness, like, no, I think that also is tied to this life experience of mine where it like, if you said, what are you going to do? I would have been like, man, I hope I'm lucky enough to be 20. And I hope I'm lucky enough to get married. Like, man, I hope I'm fortunate enough to get to have kids. But it was just this really interesting thing. And, you know, that's only one example. That whole day was not me just plumbing the depths of death. But it really was, it was this catalyst for me to really say, oh man, this is really fascinating. And even though I have been with myself and lived this whole life, and for a good portion of it, I feel so grateful to have known Jesus and had him walking alongside me. It's like, man, there's a lot to go back and learn about myself and to really understand both good and bad. So yeah, I think that was just a really unique space that spurred me on to say, oh, I really want to dig in here. And I think sometimes even in the faith community, there can be a resistance to that. Like, well, isn't that just kind of navel gazing and going back? And yeah, there are certainly patterns where it could look like that. But for me, it was like, there are so many ways that God was showing up and carrying me and teaching me lessons and uniquely wiring me. And, you know, and he knew I was going to walk through these roads and he wanted to use them for his glory. God used these things to shape me. I do want to spend some time figuring out both how it equipped me. And then, yes, there are parts. I mean, the purpose of this first thing that I did was parenting. And so it really was going back and, you know, not in a mean way, as my husband said, but in really honoring ways where it's like, hey, for the most part, 99% of parents are doing their absolute best. And, you know, do we still make a mess of it? Of course we do, because we're not perfect. But really saying, but yeah, there are things that I am equipped to bring to this, you know, world of parenting littles that I was in at the time. And then there's some skills that I see that I don't have, or there's some patterns that I really don't want to bring into my own family of origin. And I think the hardest truth that I think I fought for a long time, just going through life and even examining my own story, is just that yucky reality that we can't have lived something and have it hardwired into us and just be like, yeah, I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
Unless we do some work around it, it's like computer programmed into us. Yeah. And we absolutely have the ability to not pick those things up, but not unless we're really consciously saying, I want this particular like family narrative to end, like with my story. And these other things that are so great, like I want to be so sure that I bring them in because they were tremendous, right? Like my mom, talking about, you know, we started, am I more like my mom or my dad? And one of the ways that I would always say I'm like my mom is a masterful celebrator. She is, you know, an affirmer. She's an encourager. She has Alzheimer's now. And even in her Alzheimer's, you know, everyone shows up differently, and there will be a space where she won't be able to go back and even kind of access who she is. But even now, with her memory failing all the time, I'm just blown away by, you know, she kind of will lock in on a couple of themes when you spend time with her, and she'll just kind of circle back to those themes the whole time. But they are always, she was just here a couple months ago for my parents' wedding anniversary, and it was, I love your house. I just feel so welcome every time I come in here. And like, you've done such a good job just creating this like sweet environment. And then it was, you know, how tall Jack was and how much he looked like grandpa. But it was all of these, like, you know, and you're just like, this is delightful. You are able to see the good and call it out. So she's a great celebrator and always was a great celebrator. And birthdays were a big deal and holidays were a big deal. And and not in a performing over the top way, just in a like connected, meaningful, sweet way. And I remember even that day going through that and naming some of those things and being like, man, I really want to create family moments in holidays that feel as special as my mom did, because that was just really well done.
That's so good, Tracy. I definitely have heard that sometimes where either resistance from the church or just anybody in general, or like what your husband said, like, oh, like that feels kind of mean to go back and rehash the past. But like you said, like there are these things that are hardwired, and not to say we should just forget about it, but it is important. Like God asks us to grow, to change. Like when we are created, he wants us to continually grow more and more like him. So for us to just stay the same and say, whatever I've experienced or what has happened, gosh, yeah, like that is a part of who I am. So I have to like recognize that. I can see where sometimes if we dwell in that, if it causes us to just continually be angry, depending on what trauma or something has happened in somebody's past, or if you're like, I'm going to just hold that against somebody.
Right.
But if you use it as an opportunity for you to utilize growth and see these are maybe just like the things I didn't realize about myself or I didn't realize I was carrying with me. Gosh, it is so helpful. And you're right. It is a conscious choice of just like doing these like little checks of like, oh, maybe my tone was a little too harsh there. Maybe we, you know, or it could be a positive thing of like what you just said about your mom. I loved how she celebrated. So how can I bring that more into my life? Because I feel like maybe that's missing. For somebody who just feels like I am just trying to survive this season right now, what would be your encouragement to them to just take like 2 minutes to start in this way?
I think the thing that really struck me in going back and examining my own story was, again, not dwelling and not hanging out, but really being able to, in some ways, and not even, it's still going back and analyzing, what happened when I was 10, and really being like, I'm not going to actually have an accurate picture of that, right? But because I can't take a time machine and go back there and see all the different things. And you know what? If I did take a time machine and go back there, I'm sure I would experience it really differently. With the knowledge and the wisdom that I have now in my 50s. But it's this foundation of like, why am I doing what I'm doing, right? Like that's really the core. And so I don't think people have to even go back and do, you know, there's certainly, I think, lots of value in relationships, and especially in the tools that you bring to a marriage or parenting or a friendship or work that will come out of knowing your story better. But I think even just the 2-minute reflection in the morning of thinking through yesterday and being like, what did I love about yesterday and why did I love it? Like, I'm going to learn something from that. What did I not love about yesterday? And why didn't I love it? You know, was it that I was mistreated and that was hard and I'm sad and I just need to name that I'm sad? Or am I disappointed with myself because I showed up in a way that I know wasn't the way I wanted to show up? And how do I repair and make that right? I think just that one process of not just saying the things, but being able to take a couple minutes and just be like, and there might be 100 reasons, but it's like, what's the main one that I could think of and work through to just help myself learn from my own experiences yesterday, no matter how mountaintop or valley they were.
Yeah. That's so good. And I love how you recognize that you are a grateful person. I think each of us kind of has the superpower. I know that we all have these gifts that God's given us. I would say mine is joy. But like today, I feel a little like I'm not as joyous as I normally am. And I mean, that fluctuates. Welcome to perimenopause, okay?
Yes.
But I think that like when we have an awareness of what is that space that God has called us to, like how can we use that to our benefit rather than saying, okay, well, I'm not like Tracy and it really is hard for me to have gratitude. What would be some of your tips or encouragement as people are maybe trying to reflect through their story and just trying to figure out like, okay, what are the ways that God has gifted me to help me figure this out a little bit better?
again, it's the why are you doing it? And it's to name both the good and the hard, right? You know, to really be able to, like, I don't know if I'd gone back and looked that I could have easily just kind of gone through life and not been a celebrator like my mom. Like, and I can easily see a road where that could have been the way I showed up to motherhood. But it was so wonderful to think, oh man, when I really think about what really landed, like, this was really great. And my mom did a great job of this. And I love it. And I want to replicate that. So I think it's evaluating for a purpose. And I just think of so much of, I think of even, scripturally, like the idea of we constantly can be choosing blessings or curses, right? And so even with this knowledge, it's like, how do I use this knowledge to bless my life and the lives of the community God's giving me going forward? And I think even when you talked about dwelling or the spaces that we've seen people camp out in or that can make us fearful, right? It's like, I don't want to learn this information and then be like cursing my family or cursing my bed, right? But it's that, like, no, we can choose to utilize this great information as a blessing. And I just am always amazed when I take the time to reflect. The experiences are so much richer than I would have realized if I hadn't just taken a little time to sit with it. Yeah. So,
we get to invite God into that space, not because we're like, give us every single memory we can, because also sometimes, like, our life is like an onion. I always use that from Chuck. Our life is like an onion, where maybe at this juncture of our life, we are not able to remember or to fully deal with some of the things, or we're just not in a place to, like, really understand or grasp that concept just yet. And so I think at certain periods of our life, maybe he pulls back a layer and you're like, oh, wow. But it's because of this certain season or what have you. Tracy, you talked about, those hard seasons of our life, and you mentioned that your mom has Alzheimer's. I am so sorry for that journey for you. My grandmother had Alzheimer's dementia, and it was just, it's terrible. It is the worst.
It really is.
And how long have you been walking through that journey, and what has that been like for you?
So it's been, maybe 7 or 8 years. And it's been tricky because, and you learn so much and see so much about even your own family. Like, I've described my parents a little bit. Like, the number one person I would have said who was clearly going to see that my mom did not have the same recall and something was going on would have been my dad. And again, just so interesting how our brains delightfully in some ways protect us, just could not go there, could not see it. It was really tough and really created a lot of friction in our relationship that I had never experienced with my dad before, where I was like, man, I'm just trying to help mom and I'm trying to point to something that seems real. And I get that it is creating a waterfall of fear and anger and all the hard emotions in you. So it was a big struggle with a lot of kind of family friction, even getting her diagnosed. And then even as she is, like, it's just a terrible disease. I'm trying to, and I've walked with enough friends, and my husband's grandma had Alzheimer's too. So we've watched that with another person, not as closely as my mom. It's coming for you. And it's nothing pretty, a really horrible thing. But I think for now, we're just trying to soak in the stage she's in now and connect. And I feel like even I have a good friend whose dad had a similar, like, not exactly Alzheimer's, but adjacent Alzheimer's adjacent diagnosis. And she gave me, I met with her right when I was kind of in the throes of trying to get her diagnosed and being like, there's clearly something going on here. And then when she was diagnosed, and this friend gave me such good advice that I think of it all the time, anytime we're all together as a family, because she was like, I want to encourage you to lean into the humor of Alzheimer's. She was like, because it's devastating and it's hard. It's complicated. It's sad. But you've always known your mom 1.0. She's going to become mom 2.0, mom 3.0, mom 4.0. And she was like, but there are going to be some pretty funny parts about mom 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0. And if you are so leaning into the hard that you can't see that, you're not going to really process it well. And that was really freeing for me. And I remember at first being like, the humor, like, that seems like, what? But I mean, it is true. You know, we're together and she kind of resets about every 4 minutes. And so even just being able to say to my kids, like, hey, I want you to connect with Nana. I want you to ask her great questions. I want you to answer all of her questions and love her really well. When she asks you the question the 6th time, you absolutely should have the ability to be like, hey, don't you want to talk to Katie now? Like, let's go, like, do a switch, right? And it's okay. I mean, we had one visit where she came and my son had been desperate to make the basketball team. Had really worked the whole year. I mean, and this is going to be a part of his story, right? I mean, he's writing a college essay about it right now. Just worked his tail off to make this team and did all the things and then didn't. And was just crushed. And I have 2 boys and they're always out playing basketball in our backyard. And my mom, I mean, no joke, about every 5.5 minutes on repeat would say, now I am noticing that Jack is playing a lot of basketball and Grant, you're just not out there the way you used to be. What's going on with you? Why are you playing the basketball? I mean... Wow. And Grant would go, the tryouts were 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, Nana, and I didn't make the team. Oh, you didn't make oh my gosh, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Am I bringing up something mean? Like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They'd have a whole conversation about it. And then, I mean, I kid you not, fast forward the clock 5.5 minutes. Now, Grant, I know who the Jack is. And I mean, I thought this advice from my sweet friend was so great because literally we saw them off. They had driven to visit us. We saw them off. We're standing at the door. We're waving. They go out and Grant turns around and goes, well, if I hadn't worked through my massive disappointment and anger over not making this team, talking about it 40 times a day with Nana has certainly gotten me there. We just like died laughing. And it's like top of mind because we were just joking about it the other day. Like my other son is now going out for the basketball team and he's like, listen, if I don't make it, we cannot have Nana come visit. I can't do what Grant did.
Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Tracy, because the reality, I talk all the time about like how we can hold the joy and the painful and the ugly and the funny all at the same time. It's not comfortable by any sense of the imagination, but
but we're so tempted to be like, if it's this, it can't be this, right? It's so sad that I can't laugh. And I think it's really been helpful to my kids. And I would not have done this without my good friend's advice to be like, there are some funny parts about this and we've got to be able to name it and laugh about it because Grant, Nana was your therapist this week and she helped you talk about not making the team enough times that you actually are feeling a little bit calmer about it, right? You're resigned to reality a little better.
And gosh, like, thank you to that friend. I think that's the beautiful thing about stories and like encouragement. And when you have walked through something, you're just like, does this really matter to anyone else? Yeah, it does. It matters so much because it is this lifeline for somebody to hold on to say like, yeah, I've walked through it and let me just give you a little bit of tip as you head through it because there's something on the other side. So gosh, Tracy, thank you so much for sharing just about this idea of reflection and your gratitude and sharing about your parents. Really grateful. If people wanted to connect to you, what would be the best way that they can do that?
Email's probably best for me.
Great.
Yep. Go ahead and give people my email address. Happy to connect with anyone over email. And thanks for having me. I feel like, and I feel like you said something in the event where we first met that was so similar to that. I have a good friend, another one of my buddies. She's famous for saying like, we can't fix what we're unwilling to face. Right. And I think so just a lot of, we're never going to regret naming and facing what's real. Right. It's not always easy, but we learn so much. I mean, even just like my friend telling me about my mom, it just created this window in my own brain, like, hey, at some point, someone's going to be getting together with me, and I'm going to get to pass on her great advice. And it's this one tiny little glimmer in a hard story where God's going to show up and use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being on the Parable Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I loved when Tracy said, don't waste the mistakes, and also finding that glimmer when sometimes we're going through a rough patch. I hope you heard her conversation and that it challenged you in a way to look at your past with a new perspective of growth and with a little bit of gratitude. If you want to connect with Tracy, simply visit DanielleZapchenk.com for details. And here are 2 reflection questions. Number 1. Take a page out of Tracy's thoughts. What is something that you are grateful for right now? And maybe that is something that you don't normally think of. It can be as simple as, I am grateful for the special spoon I used to stir my coffee that morning. I'm talking that small. So think about those things that you are grateful for. Number 2, take one portion of your life. Maybe it is your childhood, elementary, high school, your early 20s, maybe like in 5-year chunks. And think about the lessons, the highs, the lows, the things that have happened over that span of 5 years. And what is God pulling out for you to experience and walk through today? If Tracy's story really resonates with you, could you do me a favor and recommend the Parable Podcast to a friend, maybe somebody who would find encouragement in Tracy's specific story today? Word of mouth, it still matters, and I would greatly appreciate it. This episode was edited by my amazing husband, Eric Zapchenk, and we hope you were encouraged to think about your own story. Remember, your parable showcases how we can make the conscious choice to be grateful and reflect daily. We'll see you back again next week on the Parable Podcast.